Once again, I send my warmest greetings to all of you. I hope you are following the lectures so far, the online courses that we are teaching so far. I always tell you that problems come with their own solutions. And so I'm not surprised that coronavirus has come with so many innovations with respect to IT. And I strongly believe that all of you are coping with it. Today we are going to continue with our topic, structure of the atmosphere, and the course is human land issues, EBS157. It has been your facilitator, Simon Boatin. By the end of the lesson, I expect you to be able to explain the structure of the atmosphere, to explain global warming, what is it? 3, explain the concept of land degradation. We started last time by looking at the structure of the atmosphere. I remember telling you that other books and other authorities may talk about 5 or 6 structure of the atmosphere. But in our case, we are looking at 4 main layers of the atmosphere. Already we have talked about 2, and I strongly believe that you have learned the 2 that we have talked about. We said the lower portions, or the first portion of the atmosphere, we call it the troposphere. Then from the troposphere there is a boundary that separates the troposphere and the next layer, the stratosphere, and that layer is called the tropopause. Then from there you go to what we call the stratosphere. Within the stratosphere, I remember mentioning that the temperature over there increases. In the troposphere, we say the higher you go, the cooler it becomes. That is the normal lapse rate. But in the stratosphere, the higher you go, the hotter it becomes. And the obvious reason is that is the layer where you can find the ozone layer. And we know that the main function of the ozone layer is to absorb the ultraviolet radiation. And so basically it will explain why that stratosphere, the higher you go, the higher it will become. There is a boundary that separates the stratosphere and the third layer called the mesosphere. And that boundary is called the stratopause. Today I want us to continue by looking at the third layer, and that is what we call the mesosphere. The mesosphere is the third layer of the atmosphere. This extends from the stratopause to about 80 kilometers, and within it temperatures once more decreases till they reach a minimum of about -90 degrees at the upper boundary of the mesosphere, called mesopause, which is another inversion layer. So now I want you to take note of this. In the troposphere, we said the higher you go, the cooler it becomes. In the stratosphere, which is the second layer, we say the higher you go, the higher it becomes. But in the mesosphere, we are saying that as you are going up, the temperature goes down again till probably it gets to -90 degrees at the upper boundary, which is the mesosphere. And within this mesosphere, there is also a boundary that separates the mesosphere and the 4th layer, that is the thermosphere, which is called the mesopause. Don't forget that basic knowledge should inform you the boundary that separates the layers are mostly called or ended, their names are ended with pause. So if it is troposphere, it is tropopause. If it is stratosphere, it is stratopause. If it is mesosphere, it is mesopause. Remember that. Now, since there is very little air in the mesosphere, pressure is very low in the mesosphere, and the upper boundary of the mesosphere is called the mesopause, like I've told you earlier. And remember, it is an inversing layer. That is, you're moving from one layer to the next layer, called the thermosphere. Remember that the thermosphere is the fourth layer of the atmosphere. The word thermo simply means heat. If I should explain to you, heat or temperature. And so the thermosphere or the ionosphere should give you some kind of idea about this whole structure. The thermosphere is the fourth layer of the atmosphere. Above the mesosphere is the thermosphere or the ionosphere, which extends up to about 500 to 700 kilometers. So let's assume you have taken a flight from the surface of the earth, then you travel upwards to about 500 kilometers up, then it informs you that you have entered the zone of the thermosphere or the ionosphere, and it stretches from the 500 kilometers up to about 700 kilometers over there. Bear in mind that the thermosphere, in the thermosphere, temperatures rise with height, probably reaching about 1500 degrees Celsius. I said 1500 degrees Celsius. I want you to understand something. The boiling point of water is 100 degrees Celsius. And just assume a boiled water falling on your legs or on you. I don't know how you feel, but strongly I think that you're going to be hurt. This is about 15 times of a boiling point of the water, which is about 1500 degrees Celsius. That alone should tell you something. That might have caused the name thermosphere, which connotes heat. So remember that in the thermosphere, we are saying that the higher you are going, temperature goes up. So in basic terms, we can say that there is a positive relationship between altitude and temperature in the thermosphere. Or in other words, there is a positive relationship between height and temperature. Now, the lower portion of the thermosphere, up to about 200 kilometers, contains mainly molecules of nitrogen and oxygen together with atoms of oxygen. Oxygen atoms predominate over nitrogen above 200 kilometers, and it is these oxygen atoms which absorb the ultraviolet radiation from the sun and temperatures to rise. So you see, the oxygen atoms predominate over the nitrogen above 200 kilometers, and these oxygen atoms absorb the ultraviolet radiation, the radiation from the sun. And basically, as in the stratosphere, where we have the ozone layer that shielded the surface of the earth from the intense heat from the sun, and because of that, the ozone layer absorbs the ultraviolet radiation, which caused the temperatures of the stratosphere to increase. The same thing is happening in the thermosphere. In the thermosphere, because of the oxygen atoms, these oxygen atoms absorb the ultraviolet radiation from the sun, which ends up increasing the temperatures in that zone. And so basically, this will be an obvious explanation of why temperatures are so high in the thermosphere. At still higher levels, the amount of air remaining is very small in the thermosphere. The diagram on the board can explain the structure of the atmosphere. I want you to understand that this is not all encompassing. There are so many diagrams depending on which note or books you consult. And so you may read wide and get a diagram. Probably apart from this, if you find this difficult, read and get simple diagram that will help you to understand the concept, the structure of the atmosphere. Now there is a serious issue on our globe these days, and it has become a catchphrase and a focus for our global leaders anytime that we meet. And that big issue is the depletion of the ozone layer. Let's understand that the ozone layer has formed, or the ozone has formed a layer in the stratosphere. Never forget that the ozone layer is found in the second layer called the stratosphere. And the layer is very important. This ozone layer is very important to life on Earth because its main function is to absorb the ultraviolet radiation from the sun and prevent the intense heat from this ultraviolet radiation or the sun from reaching the ground or the surface of the earth. Understand that if the same quantum of ultraviolet radiation from the sun reaches the earth's surface, probably all life on earth will perish. So the main function of the ultraviolet radiation is to absorb this ultraviolet radiation to prevent the intense of it reaching the earth's surface for it to come and cause havoc. Understand that the ultraviolet radiation has harmful effects on people and other living organisms. Now the layer, however, allows infrared light from the sun to reach the ground. So instead of allowing the intense heat to reach the ground, only the infrared light from the sun is allowed to reach the ground. And that is what the ultraviolet, the role the ozone layer plays in the atmosphere. However, understand that there is depletion of this ozone layer, which has become a global concern to all of us. In the 1970s, scientists discovered in the Arctic Circle that there had been a tear in the ozone layer. Since then, there has been gradual depletion. Seriously. In the 90s, as far as about 40 years ago, scientists discovered that there has been a tear in the ozone layer. And basically, I always say that the major cause of these problems remains anthropogenic, human activities. And since then, this depletion has been gradual. Now, the depletion of the ozone layer has been attributed to release of certain chemicals by man into the atmosphere. They are generally known as ozone depleting substances, ODS if you like, which are mainly chlorine oxide and nitrogen oxide. These are gases or substances that are emitted into the atmosphere by human beings through human activities in our quest to utilize the resources on the earth's surface. We end up destroying other portions of nature. So as we utilize the resources on the earth's surface, we end up emitting this chlorine oxide and nitrogen oxide into the atmosphere, and these gases are seriously depleting the ozone layer. Now, the sources of the chlorine oxide are from chlorofluorocarbon, CFCs basically, which is used in cooling system of refrigerators and propellants or aerosols in spraying cans. So understand this. That is why these days governments in various countries have banned importation of refrigerators and air conditioners that have CFCs in them, because though they help in the cooling process, they end up emitting this chlorine oxide into the atmosphere, depleting the ozone layer, and it's so serious. Also understand that propellants or aerosols in spraying cans also emit this chlorine oxide into the atmosphere. The resultant feature is that it ends up depleting the ozone layer, and the ultraviolet radiation get the opportunity to reach our Earth's surface with that intensity. These gases are of much concern because of their wide diffusion. Now the chemicals or gases are transported into the upper atmosphere. When this chlorine oxide are emitted, they are transported into the upper atmosphere by natural air motion, i.e. diffusion, and they and their product attack and destroy the ozone layer. Basically, this is how the ozone layer is depleted. But the basic cause of the ozone layer depletion is anthropogenic activities, human activities. That is the basic cause. Now, somebody may ask, if the ozone layer is depleting, if there is a tear in the ozone layer, do I care? Yes, you and I care, so far as we remain living on this earth, because they have huge ramifications on all living organisms on our Earth's surface. What are some of the effects of the depletion of the ozone layer? It may cause cancer of the skin cancer, especially on people with black spots on their skin. When there is serious, or the intensity of the ultraviolet radiation is so high, you and I cannot bear. Now, its repercussions on our skin is that it can cause our skin to suffer cancer, which is normally called skin cancers, in various forms. So the ozone layer depletion will cause the intensity of the ultraviolet radiation to be high on the Earth's surface, which will affect the skin of humanity, causing skin cancer. The next point is that it may also cause cataract on the eyes. That is, it can lead to blindness. It is basic knowledge for us to know and understand that intense heat can cause eye distraction. And so basically, from our basic observation, most of the times you will see that communities where the intensity of the sun radiation is so high, people suffer a lot from cataract and other eye problems. And so it's one of the causes of the depletion of the ozone layer. The ultraviolet radiation may destroy the microorganisms in the atmosphere and the soils, and it can therefore lower crop yields. There are some living organisms that cannot face the intensity of the high intensity of ultraviolet radiation. So as the ozone layer is depleted and the ultraviolet radiation gets the opportunity to reach the Earth's surface in this high intensity, many living or microorganisms may extinct. And when they extinct, because they have some kind of connection with soil fertility, they will end up leading to low crop yields or lower crop yields. Also, it can also lead to reduction of ozone in the stratosphere by man-made chemicals, which will produce greenhouse warming of the troposphere, similar to the one produced by carbon dioxide. This is because ozone gas absorbs heat from the sun, and its reduction allows more heat to the atmosphere. The main function of the ozone layer is sometimes, apart from the is to absorb the ultraviolet radiation. But when it is depleted and 8 gases are also taken away, the implication is that the intensity of the ultraviolet radiation is going to be high in the atmosphere, increasing the temperatures in the troposphere. Ultraviolet radiation in the troposphere has the effect of weakening the human body's resistance to diseases, thus exposing the body to several diseases. Now, this brings us to the concept global warming, which in this sense we will liken it to climate change. Once again, the ozone layer depletion has led to a major problem on our globe called global warming or climate change. This is now by far the most important issue for our global leaders anytime they meet on global stage to think about our world. The climate change. It affects you, it affects me, and it's a serious problem, and it has become a catch policy or a catch problem for our global leaders to find remedies to this. Now, what is global warming? Before we explain global warming, let's understand what we mean by greenhouse effect. Basically, let me try to explain what we mean by greenhouse. What is greenhouse before we look at the greenhouse effect? Greenhouse is a concept or technology or innovation that was adopted by those in the temperate regions, as particularly in the Scandinavians. They wanted to grow crops that were mainly found in the tropical regions. When I say the tropical regions, tropics, areas within the Tropic of Cancer and Tropic of Capricorn, between these areas, the equator, those around the equator, all countries are the tropics. The tropic because we normally find intense heat because the sun normally moves within this area. So most of the periods in the year we have sunshine, unlike those at the temperate regions. And so those in these temperate regions wanted to grow crops that were found in the tropical zones, but they did not have the temperature that could allow the growth of this tropical plant. So for them to have this tropical temperature or the tropical environment in these temperate zones, they created this technology called greenhouse. This greenhouse is like a glass-like house. They build a house with a glass, and the glass allowed the sun rays to enter, but does not allow the heat to go out. So they have built their house in such a way that this technology will be able to absorb heat without allowing the heat to go. And by so doing, they got the tropical environment to grow the tropical product or the tropical plant. And so that is the idea, greenhouse. So now generally, experts have been using greenhouse to mean heat. And so anytime you hear greenhouse gases, it simply means gases that produce heat. Now, what is greenhouse effect? Greenhouse effect or greenhouse warming refers to the effect of carbon dioxide on the radiated sun rays to the earth. The heat radiated by the sun reaches the lower atmosphere, that is the troposphere, easily, but much of it is trapped or absorbed by carbon dioxide. Now, this is it. Don't forget that we have earlier explained that there has been a tear. Scientists have discovered that there has been a tear in the ozone layer, and since then the ozone layer has been depleting. Because the ozone layer has been depleting, and its main function is to absorb the ultraviolet radiation. Now the sun rays or the ultraviolet radiation get the opportunity to reach the earth's surface with huge contour or intense heat. Now, because human activities, once again, human beings, anthropogenic activities are so intense on the earth's surface, we end up producing more carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. Meanwhile, bear in mind that one major function of carbon dioxide is to absorb heat. One, look at the problem we have caused. Through our activities, we have depleted the ozone layer. And because the ozone layer has depleted, this ultraviolet radiation is able to reach the Earth's surface with high intensity. Our own activities have also increased the emission of carbon dioxide. And the major function of carbon dioxide, sometimes, one major function of carbon dioxide is also to retain heat or absorb heat. Now, because we have increased the quantum of carbon dioxide on the Earth's surface, we end up absorbing serious or a high quantum of heat on the Earth's surface. It doesn't allow the ultraviolet radiation to reflect back, and so the heat is retained on the Earth's surface, causing the Earth's surface to warm. That is why these days all of us are complaining that temperatures are so high. Now, all of us, gone were the days about 15-20 years back, when it gets to December, at least if nothing at all, you feel some small winter environment of some kind of a small winter. We in Ghana here or in Africa experience our own winter during December. But these days it gets to December and you don't even feel anything. We keep saying that things are changing. Yes, it is changing because of you and I. Sometimes somewhere 25th December and you are still feeling heat. But way back 25th December in Ghana here, one couldn't live without wearing a pullover or sweater. And that is the concept global warming or climate change. Now the absorbed heat warms the atmosphere, and this increased supply of carbon dioxide will mean more heat being absorbed and more warming of the atmosphere. Carbon dioxide thus forms natural greenhouse, i.e. allowing heat to enter but not letting it leave the atmosphere. I think I've earlier explained this. So one of the greenhouse gases is carbon dioxide. You can also talk of methane. All these things are greenhouse gases. That is why sometimes you will see most of our dumping sites always burning. The waste that we throw there, the major gas sometimes it produces is methane, and methane is a greenhouse gas, so it is always on fire. So most of the times, most of our or many of our dumping sites, you will see them burning because of the presence of methane there. Now, by nature, there should not be excess supply of carbon dioxide. Understand that in God's own wisdom, by nature there should not be excess supply of carbon dioxide to raise temperature too high. Now, in the thinking of the supernatural being that created Earth, that is the belief of other people, the sea takes 60% of carbon dioxide released. Some of it is used by plankton and some dissolve. Now, the excess of the carbon dioxide should be taken in by a plant to manufacture their foods, a process known as photosynthesis. Despite the above, scientists now report of a phenomenon known as global warming, resulting in climate change. How we get it? This is basic. We are doing certain things, emitting a lot of or a huge quantum of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. Meanwhile, we are cutting down the trees, which absorb the carbon dioxide and use it in their process, the photosynthesis process. And so we keep on increasing the quantum of carbon dioxide on the Earth's surface. And its ability to absorb heat cannot be challenged. And that is why we are experiencing this intense heat on the Earth's surface. resulting in this famous climate change that has taken our world by surprise, and our leaders are always trying to research to find remedies to this grave problem. They say that there is a steady rising of the Earth's atmosphere temperature, which will increase by 3.5 degrees in 100 years. United Nations Summit in Copenhagen 2009 aimed at cutting down gas emissions by 40%. And I think that is one of the reasons why all coolants that have CFCs in them have been banned. Now, causes of global warming. One, there has been accelerated increase in emission of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere by man. Our activities, we end up increasing the quantum of atmosphere into the atmosphere, the quantum of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, and this end up absorbing the heat to warm the atmosphere. The surface of the earth. Also, bushfires and bush burning and burning of wood as fuel produce carbon dioxide. Our own activities by causing bushfires, bush burning, and wood burning. When we do that, we end up producing carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. Now, the fast destruction of vegetation, especially the forest. When you cut down tree, you are only increasing the quantum of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, because the tree is to be there to absorb the carbon dioxide. Meanwhile, we are cutting off all this vegetation, and this is causing a huge global warming. So when you cut a tree, one tree, plant 5 for generation unborn. Now, the next cause is gas flaring. The wastefully burning of gas in the process of extracting crude oil is a major cause of global warming. This is another one. Now, effect of global warming. Rising temperatures have the effect of melting ice in the cold regions to increase volume of the sea. Gone were the days. In the temperate regions, in the polars, you had intense ice. But these days, because of intense heat, these ice have been melting, increasing water levels, sea levels, and nowadays we experience a lot of flooding. And so we say this may lead to many island states and coastal areas becoming under threat of drowning because of serious flooding. It's also responsible for drought in many areas, leading to reduced freshwater supply. Also, it causes the destruction of many arable lands that could have been used for agricultural purposes. We end up destroying it as a result of this climate change, reducing its yield capabilities. Now, 25% of plant and all animal species will be in danger of extinction with a rise in temperature of 1 degree to 2.5 degrees Celsius. This is a serious problem. So the temperature increase to that amount or to that level, and so it calls for a serious attention for all of us to take part. Importance of the atmosphere. Now we have brought our concept, the atmosphere, to gradually we are bringing it to an end. So let us look at the importance of the atmosphere. Now, the atmosphere allows the sun's rays and energy to reach the Earth's surface. And we all know that we need the sun's energy, a bit of it, to survive. And the atmosphere allows this to happen to us. Bear in mind that all weather and climatic elements and conditions needed to sustain human, animals, and plant life are produced in the atmosphere. For example, clouds, pressure, humidity, sunshine, rainfall, which are all needed on the Earth's surface and are essential for our lives or for our living, are produced in the atmosphere. The atmosphere contains gases, most of which are essential for survival of plants, animals, and other living organisms. Oxygen, for instance, is needed by man and animals for respiration, and carbon dioxide is taken in by plants to manufacture their foods. Thank you very much. Now we will look at the concept soil degradation or land degradation. My students, don't say soil pollution or land pollution. Always say land degradation or soil degradation. You can say atmospheric pollution or air pollution, or you can say water pollution. But for soil or land, you say degradation. Now, what is soil degradation? It is the gradual process by which the natural state of the land or soil and its quality are destroyed through the activities of man and resulting in decline of its capability to support living organisms. So I keep saying that the underlying cause of all these environmental problems remains human induced. So through you and I, our activities that we engage in, we end up introducing some substances, thereby reducing the quality of the land and leading to the decline of its capability to support living organisms. Activities such as leaching, soil erosion, loss of soil nutrients, desertification, and soil degradation are all forms of land or soil degradation. 3% of the land area of Ghana is under threat of degradation. Now, causes of soil degradation. Mining. We all know what mining has done to our environment. We basically know, or generally know, this illegal mining in our communities or in our country to be called galamsey. Illegal or illicit mining. Many people engage in illegal mining without taking note or notice of due diligence, due process. They just use their machines, technology anyhow, extract the gold, leaving the land degraded. And so we have all witnessed many of our rivers and streams are on the way of extinction. We can talk of River Ofen, River Pra. They have all been polluted as a result of these illicit mining activities. What galamsey has done to us. So illegal mining is one of the causes of soil degradation or land degradation. Disposal of solid and liquid waste. Poor disposal of soil and liquid waste. We all know, you and I, we sit on bus and throw rubbishes away anyhow. That is what we do. As we do that, we end up degrading the land, which is so bad. We have sun winning. People go to the beach and win the sun over there. We go to the land where we have sun, then we win. Meanwhile, we have to understand that that sand that we find is the topmost part of the land which supports plant growth. And so when you win away, or when you win, definitely you are going to leave the sand infertile or the land infertile. So sand winning, without taking note of due process and due diligence, will cause land degradation. Excessive grazing of animals. We leave our cattle to graze anyhow, and continuous grazing of these animals will end up leaving the land bare. When they leave the land bare, definitely erosion and other activities will take place, which will reduce the fertility of the land. Bush burning and lumbering. We know the importance of vegetation on our land. We end up cutting it anyhow. We don't replace them. We burn the bush, we leave the land bare, and the ramifications of it are best known to all of us, which is so serious. And that is why, as an environmental student, you have to be environmentally conscious and become an advocate to environmental problems. I want to see my students leading the advocacy towards maintaining the environmental quality. It is for generations unborn. I keep saying this. Whatever that you do, that will not have any positive impact on the generation unborn, or whatever that you do that will incapacitate the generation unborn to come and meet their needs is bad. And that is why these environmental problems are so grave and so serious, to the extent that we don't have to joke with it. Now we have over-cultivation. One land, for 10 years, we cultivate product on it continuously. And that is so serious. We end up degrading the land. Now, effect of this land degradation. Basically, one of the major effects is destruction of vegetation. When these illegal mining activities take over, virtually they take the vegetation cover and they end up destroying the vegetation. You go to these Galamsey areas, in the Amansie and those places, Adanse and those places, you witness the destruction of the vegetation as a result of illegal mining. Because of this illicit mining or the Galamsey activities, we also experience low agricultural productivity. You can go to these rural communities, which generally supposed to have been the producer of agricultural activities. Nowadays, you go to these rural communities who are Galamsey communities. Because of Galamsey activities, they import food from the urban centers such as Kumasi and Accra to the rural areas to eat or consume, which should have been the other way around, all because of illicit mining. Another effect of this environmental degradation or land degradation can be loss of life. You degrade the land. All these effects, its resultant feature or effect is loss of life. Now, what are some of the government responses to this environmental degradation or the environmental degradation? One, the government has established the Environmental Protection Agency to sanitize environmental activities. Hello, we all know Environmental Protection Agency, EPA. When you want to engage in any environmental activity, this is the agency that is to oversee that you are going through the due process to ensure sanity on the land. The next one is environmental education, which is integrated in school syllabi and curricula. We have so many environmental issues like these ones that we are learning, is to imbibe in you some kind of environmental knowledge to understand the dynamics of our environment, so you will learn how to treat the environment, so you become environmental educator, so you can become environmental advocacy or environmental advocate to push for environmental sanity. Now, there's also formulation of environmental sanitation policy under the auspices of the Ministries of Science and Technology and rural and local government in collaboration with the Ministry of Finance and Economic Planning. All these things are government response to environmental degradation. Now, there is also attending conferences. Government agencies and officials have been attending conferences and they've been ratifying protocols and conventions on environmental issues. For example, Vienna Convention for the protection of the ozone layer, United Nations framework on climate change, etc., etc. All these things, government of Ghana and other governments have ratified protocols and conventions on these environmental issues. Last but not least, maybe the formulation of national environmental policy. We have national environmental policy to ensure that the environmental sanity prevails in this country. This brings us to the end of our class. I strongly believe that you will learn. I urge you, irrespective of where you find yourself, I urge you to take this opportunity to learn. In every adversity, there is an opportunity. Enjoy this. Thank you.